So, welcome Mie to
Thank you.
this Finnish webinar about highly positive avian influenza. Now someone has a microphone on, so let's, jos kaikki muut osallistujat pistää mikit kiinni, niin ei tule mitään kiertoääntä sitten mistään. Katsotaan, mä tsekkaan. I will just check that everyone has their mic closed because for some reason the voice started to circulate. Okay, but now we are ready to start. I just put on the recording, so this webinar will be recorded. And I told the audience that they are allowed to ask questions during the presentation by raising their hands, and I will look if someone raises their hand, so you can just concentrate on your presentation. But I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit better than I already did in Finnish. So please welcome Mie, and the show is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm quite nervous what you told them, Hannah, because I couldn't understand how you presented me, but I'm sure you did it fine. My name is Mie Blom. I'm working at the Danish Agriculture and Food Council in Copenhagen in Denmark, and I have been working with the poultry sector for almost 25 years. A mix of both working with the broiler sector as well as the egg producing sector. So that's a little bit of both. Hannah, can you see my presentation now?
Yes, we can see it clearly.
Perfect. Hannah asked me if I could tell something about the bird flu and how we are handling the cases in Denmark. First of all, I would like to say that it is mostly our authorities that is handling the positive cases, but we are handling all the questions from behind. That is from the industry, the slaughterhouses, the packing stations, and the producers as well. So we are due to a lot of outbreaks over the past years, we have quite a big experience. We start with what we think started it all. It is the wild birds. And as you can see here on this slide, you can see that Denmark is located in the middle of the yellow highway.
Mie,
yeah?
just a question. The page didn't turn, so is there something in the sharing?
Maybe.
Let's check it first. So
I will try again.
Yeah, please. Because we could only see the front page.
That would be quite boring.
Yeah.
What about now?
Still the same page.
Still the same page. Maybe you should share it instead, Hannah. I think that's the solution.
Yeah, we do that, and then you just
say next.
Yes, we do that. So I will find it here. That's why we shared the presentation, so that if something like this happens, then we can
exactly
change it. But okay. And I have Vera here who can confirm also that if it shows, but it downloads now a little bit. You had such a big presentation, so now it's down.
Please ask questions as we go, because otherwise you will be bored of hearing me talk. So next, Hannah. So here you see some of the big roads for the wild birds when they are drafting from summer to winter and back again. And as you see here, Denmark is in the middle of the yellow highway. And we have a very small country, but we have water all around us. So it's a very good place for the wild birds to go down and eat and drink and rest before they go further. So we have a very big transport of wild birds coming and going all around the year almost. Next, please. A little bit of history. We have surveillance of wild birds normally every year. If we go back to 2019, we saw 3 positive cases of high pathogenic bird flu out of total 111 findings. That is very low. Next, please. If we go to 2020, it's a total different picture, because this year we saw 93 positive cases out of almost 300 findings of wild birds, and that made a positive findings with 32%. And you have to take into account that if there is one dot on the map, then you don't collect any more birds from that area, because you have already investigated that area with other birds. So the total amount of people calling in and saying we have found a wild dead bird, that is more than the 300 you see here. So this year was a really high incidence of normal people going out in the nature and finding dead birds. At the same time, we have to remember that this was also the time where everyone was at home due to COVID. So there was a lot of people going for a walk. So maybe that also had an influence, but we could see a rise in what we found in the wild birds. Next, please. And this is 2021, when it really got crazy. And this is only for the first quarter and the fourth quarter of 2021. And here you can see that we have over 300 positive findings out of almost 800 cases. So we are rising every year. And the next one. And for this year, it keeps going. And again, not that many findings actually this year, but a lot of them is positive, and they are really positive. They are massive infected with the virus. They are bleeding from the organs. They have it in the brain. It's all around. And not that many findings, but people are back to work. No one is using so much time out in the nature anymore. Everybody has to catch up with what they missed in the 2 COVID years. So still a very high incidence of findings. And actually we also found it in game birds, hunting birds that were shut down. Fine birds looked okay. They were infected as well. And that's the first time we have seen it in what seems to be healthy birds, but they are still infected. So that's really bad. And as you can see, as you probably know, the winter last year, we saw H5N8, and this year we see H5N1. So there has been a switch as well in what virus we have found, as well as there has been in the total Europe incidence area. Next one. And this is what Europe looked like last winter. A lot of wild birds and a lot of outbreaks, and mostly H5N8. You can see Denmark is totally red. That's all the cases from the wild birds. So we have, together with Germany and Holland, we are in the most hidden area ever from the wild birds. Next, please. And this is what it looks like this year. Another type, H5N1, but still Denmark is no longer on the map. It's totally gone due to findings in the wild birds. So, and the yellow one is outbreaks on farms from this period, and it's yeah, really bad. But in total, we can say that compared to France, if you look down north on the west of France, they have over 1,000 outbreaks this winter. So some areas are really hard, massive infected with the high pathogenic virus. Next, please. And what will happen next year? Well, no one can answer that. As one of our professors in this virus is commenting when he's asked by the papers, he says that the only thing we know about the bird flu is that we really don't know anything. So no one knows what's going on to happen next winter, but I can tell you that we are preparing very hard to see a similar situation next year. Maybe a new type, maybe not, but I don't think it's going to go away. Next one. So what is the consequences in Denmark due to these seasons where the virus is so heavily hitting our country? Well, last year or in 2020, we already the 6th of November started to having an in-housing legislation. And that means that all poultry has to be indoor, except for the very small flocks with an outdoor area less than 40 square meters. They can go out in that very small area, but otherwise you have to keep your birds inside. Ducks and geese are under special regulation. They have to be outdoor because they have to have access to water, but they have restriction on their area as well, and they have to protect the ducks and the geese from wild birds in different kind of regulation. We are using both fireworks and shooting and whatever to keep the wild birds away. This year it was a very long period until the 29th of May, and that cost a lot of money because the flocks who were used to going out, we have a very big, almost 2.5 million layers in Denmark is going outdoor every day. Our organic and our free range flocks are outdoor every day, all the year round. And of course, it was quite different to take the animals inside and keep the same animal welfare in the flock. They have to give them a lot of material so they wouldn't start hatching each other and so on. So it was really, really tough. And again, last year, it started 1st of November, and we have just, the authorities had just taken the legislation down by the 4th of May. So now we are crossing our fingers that we don't get any more outbreaks this year, but who knows what's going to happen next year, this winter, because if this is going to be the case every year, we have to take into account how our production is going to be in the future, because if our outdoor production has to be indoor for such a long period, that is going to be a problem. And from May until November, actually they are having time outdoor much less than they are having time indoor. So it's quite a problem. Next.
Question about
Yes.
the free range egg production. So because the indoor period was such a long, so the free range eggs couldn't be marked as a free range.
If you take the next slide, I have something about that.
Okay.
Yes. Our free range hens, they can only be called free range on the packages for 16 weeks. Last year it was 12 weeks, and now the EU Commission has raised that to 16 weeks, but still 16 weeks is not covering it. Our producers is beginning to think about when they are changing the hen flocks, because if you put in a new hen flock for example, on the 1st of February, you can still have 16 weeks from the 1st of February and so on, because it's a new flock, and they can be called free range as well, even though they have never been outdoor. But it is extremely costful for the free range hen flocks, because the space in the shops where the free range eggs used to be, that place is when we reached the 4th of May, it was very difficult to get the free range eggs back into the shops because the place were gone. So actually we don't have a lot of free range hen flocks, but it's only getting less, I can say that. For the organic, it's a little bit different because they still have the organic feed. The number of hens per house is smaller, and they have the what you call it,
windows in the house. And
and the extra feed, the crust pills and the straw and whatever they have to have as well. So that is a little bit different, and they have not been hidden the same way yet. But still, consumers are starting to ask questions about this, because how can it still be organic if the animals is not going outside? But for the time being, it is the government who is deciding that the situations of the disease is so hard that they rule all the other legislation. So we just have to follow and then fight in the EU Commission to get the same dispensation for the free range hens as well as the organic. But it's difficult, and it's very costful, because the producer is being paid for the eggs as for a barn egg. They are being classified lower and losing a lot of money. Was that covering that question, Hannah?
yes, perfectly. Thank you.
Next, please. Now a bit about our outbreaks. We started in 2020, and as you remember, I told you that we had the in-housing regulation from the 6th of November, and actually only 10 days later we had our first outbreak, and that was in a parent animal flocks for broilers with 25,000 hens, and we cannot, and we still haven't found how the virus got into that house. We think it is blown in by ventilation on dust, but it's not confirmed, and we still don't know how. We had a very small hobby flock in December, and then on New Year's Eve at 6 o'clock exactly, we had another flock of game birds, shooting birds, with 700 pieces of different species, geese and pheasants and so on. And that was just the beginning, because if you change the slide, Hannah, this is the picture of 2021. And still, as I say to our industry and our producers, yes, we have had a lot of outbreaks, but still it is nothing compared to if you go to France or Holland or whatever. We still are in a category very, very low beyond other countries. But from our little country and our little production, it's still a lot. And the problem for us is in the extreme, it is that we export a lot of our broilers to the third countries. And the minute we have our first outbreak, that export is being stopped. And when you export more than 50 million, 60 million birds per year, it's quite a lot of economic losses and also problems, because what are we going to do with those animals instead? So in 2021, we had 17 outbreaks. I have covered the last 4 outbreaks because they are actually to the season 21-22. But as you can see here, we had a very different kind of outbreaks, some small, some big. Then we had a lot of turkeys who got the infection, and unfortunately there was, I think it is pressed down to one primarily outbreak, and the second one is secondary, and the third and the fourth is also secondary outbreaks due to transmission of the virus by farmers or whatever. But still a lot of animals, and a lot of hobby flocks as well, and small flocks. And we even have, you can see the first one is Rodriguez and parakeets, and still people call in and say they have sick birds. It's really costful. We thought it was over by April, and the in-horsing legislation was stopped the 29th of May, and we thought everything was good. And then the 5th of July, we had a very big outbreak again in parent animals and broilers. At the same time, there was outbreaks in the northern part of Germany, very close to the Danish border. So there's no doubt that there wasn't some transmission of the wild birds from Germany to Denmark at that point. But still, it was so annoying that we got that last outbreak, because it slowed the opening of our export again. And then we had a break. The in-housing started again the 1st of November, and this year we saw that already the 3rd of November we got the first outbreak in a small flock. And then it kept going. And again, New Year's Eve this year at 8 o'clock in the evening, we had an outbreak again. Next slide, Hannah. And this year we have 6 outbreaks. Turkeys again we had, and mostly hobby flocks. And then in January we got the first barn egg flock, the first laying egg flock who got hit by the virus. And we still don't have a clue. There's been made a very big risk assessment up in that area, and we don't have a clue how that got into the farm. So yeah, in total we had 26 outbreaks over the last 2.5 years. So 26 is not that much compared to others, but we think it's quite enough. Next. And besides all the cases that have turned out positive, we have had more than 100 cases with suspicion of infected flocks. And that means that people call in due to either clinic in the flock, dead birds, a lack of feed or water intake, or animals acting strange or whatever, and they have the obligation to call their veterinarians to come out and see if they have to make a suspicion on avian flu. And we have had more than 100 cases on that. And every time we have a suspicion, we start the whole program of how to handle a coming positive case. That means that we are making maps of 3 kilometers, 10 kilometer zones. We are contacting the people who are located in those zones. We are in contact with the authorities about the positive case or not positive case. We don't know that yet. And we use almost 20 hours non-stop for each of these cases, handling and helping our companies and producers of what is going to happen if this is going to be positive. And then only 26 cases was positive, so that was good. But still, it is a lot of work we are doing handling those suspicions as well. Next, please. We have had made a lot of information to both the industry and the producers to make them aware of how important it is to have a very high biosecurity. We have a very high biosecurity on our farms due to salmonella and our special guarantee in the EU, but still there's a lot of things that you can do better when we stand in this situation with a virus coming from the wild birds. So unfortunately, I only have one of these in English, but we have made quite a lot of these papers who is laminated and sent out to the producer so he can put them up on his farm, and they are translated into both Polish, English, French, Hungarian, whatever, so that the employees at the farms as well can read about this. Next, please. We also send a lot of information on emails every time we have a suspicion or something changing, in-housing regulation or whatever. We send an email out to all of our producers to let them know what is happening, how the situation is, where is the zones in Denmark, how is the situation in the total Europe. It's very important to keep telling both the producers and the industry that this is the situation now. And if something changes in 2 days, we will let you know. We will let you know all the time so that you can make your calculation or make your changes on farm or in the industry on how to handling the situation as it changes along the winter. Next, please.
I have a question here.
Yeah.
Where do you get the information from about the suspicion? Do you get it from the farmer or do you get it from the authorities?
I get it from the authorities. There has been, we have a collaboration with the authorities on these very tough diseases, and we collaborate with them on everything almost. It's a very good collaboration, and they let us know every time. There's made a whole policy about how we are doing this. And also in the period of the virus, we have an online meeting every Wednesday. We have an expert group on AI where I am represented and some of our veterinarians from the industry is represented, and then an ornithologist from Aarhus Universitet is part of the game as well, and then the authorities. And we catch up every week. What has happened? What is the plan for the next week? Is there something we should do? Are we going to inform our producers of some new things? The regulation has been changed or whatever. So it's a really good collaboration.
Thanks. Sounds really good system that you have there. A little bit envious here.
We have also made almost a book about facts on bird flu. It was made 2020, so the new animal health law is not implemented in this book, but still here we send it out to all our farmers, and the purpose of that was to give them an information on what is this virus, what do I have to do on my farm, what if my animals begin to die, what am I going to do, so that they had everything in this Bible, so to say, and they were extremely happy about this. Next. And this is how it looked when it was really bad. This is some of our outbreaks. We make maps, but our maps is only a calculation on how it's going to be. And then the real maps who is really covering is made from the authorities. And this is the map from the authorities, and they are online at their homepage. So everyone can go in and see these maps. And here you can see both the circles of 3 and 10 kilometer zone and where they are located exactly. And you can also, if you think that you are located in a zone, you can put in your address, and then you can see if you are in a surveillance zone or a protection zone. So that's quite good. Next, please. And one more, I think. Yeah. This is just a picture of what is happening when a farm is found infected. If you press again, Hannah. And one more. Yeah. The red one indicates a suspicion. That is when the veterinary has been called to the farm. And that could be due to early warning system or clinical signs or whatever he thinks is wrong. And he will call the veterinarian. They will come and take some samples. And they will decide, do we think that this is bird flu or Newcastle disease or whatever of the very heavy diseases. Mostly they don't dare to do anything that send in the samples to our lab SSI, and they will do it by police car. It is that is the way to do it. In some is by car with sirens on, so that the samples is gone to Copenhagen as soon as possible, and some is going by helicopter. That is quite, depends on where the area it is. But we know that we have to, the authorities know that they have to handle this very fast. And they do that. They're taking it really serious. And we are quite happy about this because the quicker we can close it down on one farm, the more we can close it down not to being spread to other farms nearby. So the sample is going into the lab, and then you are told, oh no, and then you are told that your herd is infected. Your animals is going to be killed, and the farm and the stable must be cleaned and disinfected, and that is done by the authorities. They have given a cleaning company the authority to do that. And then when it's all clean and ready again, you can put new hens in your house or broilers or whatever, and then you have to cross your fingers that you don't get infected anymore. And there are quite a lot of rules on what to do when you are in both a suspicion or with a positive sample. You are being closed down. The whole area around the farm is being closed down. And if the positive sample is found, then it's we call it the little army. It's like a big squad of people who's going to kill the animals, who's going to clean the house for the first cleaning and disinfection and so on. And they are dressed in alien suits, and they have to shower to go in and out, and it's extremely restricted. And the owner of the flock is being told to go into the house and stay in there with his wife and kids and not come out for the first couple of days. It's not his farm anymore. In this situation, the authorities is taking over the whole farm, and they are the ones who's deciding what is going to be done and what is not going to be done. He has nothing to say at this time of point. Next, please.
I have a question about the slide.
Yeah.
You said that when the sample is sent to the laboratory, how long does it usually take to get the result, if it's positive or negative, and how long does it take to analyze the certain virus?
It depends if it's early in the morning or late in the night that the sample is being taken, because if it's in the night, the people from the lab has to come to work and make the sample. But it usually takes about 24 hours from the sample is taken on farm until we have the results. Then we have had some cases where the sample is a mess, and the laboratory has problems identifying whether or not it's positive or negative. but that is due to the samples, and then it can take maybe 2 days, but mostly it takes less than 24 hours.
Yeah, thank you.
And that is including the transport period as well.
Okay. Voin sanoa vielä tähän väliin suomeksi, että jos tulee kysymyksiä, niin voi tietenkin myös chattiin sitten laittaa. I just told them, everyone that if there's questions, they can also put it in the chat.
Yeah. There was being made restriction zones, and you're no longer allowed to transport animals into a zone. That is really a problem because broilers, day-old broilers or young hens to the egg production or day-old hens, they are not coming into the zones, and that is completely closed. We cannot do anything about it. That is a part of the new animal health law. Before this was taken into account, the authorities made corridors where we were allowed to drive animals into the zone. That is restricted now. That means for the broilers, they can put in fertilized eggs instead and catch them on farm. That is what they can do instead. But for the egg industry, there is nothing we can do except wait until the zone is cancelled, because it's not possible to catch laying hens in the farm when you have to kill all the males after catching. That is not possible to do on farm. And then we have all outbreaks. No matter how an outbreak is, or if every time they are different. Either there is someone lying in a zone that we haven't seen before. Maybe there is 10 broiler producers in a 10-kilometer zone. Maybe there's a hatchery. Maybe there's a slaughterhouse. Maybe there's an egg packing station. All outbreaks are different. And the first thing that our authorities is making is a risk assessment. How is this case going to be handled? What are we going to do first? What are we going to do next? What is the biggest risk? How can we give allowance to some of them putting eggs out of the zone? What are we going to do? Rah, rah, rah. And that can easily take days. And that is part of the new animal health law as well, that the authorities have to make this risk assessment. And that is really difficult when you have a zone with a lot of farms inside. I can tell you that one of the 10-kilometer zones Holland just had for a month ago, they had 250 farms in a 10-kilometer zones. It's unbelievable, but they did, and that must have been a nightmare, I think. For hobby flocks, there has been some changes in the new animal health law as well. I will get back to that, but one of the changes is that before we didn't have to have zones on hobby flocks. Now we do. But if the risk assessment is made and that is saying that there is no risk in these zones, then we don't have to follow the legislation on the zones, the restriction on the zones. That means for a hobby flock zone, we can get animals inside. The restriction on the zone is different for these, but the zones are still there. And then we have when we are testing, for example, broiler flocks who are going to slaughter from a zone, they have clinical vision now instead of sampling, and that is really good because the samples were a nightmare to take. They have to be frozen and they have to keep being frozen until they arrived at the lab, and that costs so much. So that is quite good. And then you can transport your eggs from a zone to a packing station outside the zones on plastic trays. That is new, and that is quite good because before that we had to transport it on paper trays, and no packing station is no longer accepting paper trays in Denmark. So everything was impossible when they should handle those paper trays. Yeah, next. This is just an example on what's going to happen when we have an infected, and I have taken a layer flock as an example. On day one, we have the suspicion, and when the suspicion is made, the farm is at the same time made under public surveillance by the veterinary authorities. On day two, we get the results, and if the flock is found not infected, then everything is fine again. But if the flock is found infected with one of the heavy types, H5 or H7, then the 3 and the 10-kilometer zone is put on the map. Then they start killing the animals. Maybe on day 2 in the evening or day 3, they will have killed all the animals. And they make the preliminary cleaning and disinfection. And from that point of view, that is where our clock is start ticking down. Because due to our export, we have to have as short window as possible on time. One day is costing our industry several million Danish kroners due to this closing of the export. So we are keeping and we are pushing the authorities each time to make the preliminary cleaning and disinfection as soon as possible. And from that on, we are counting 21 days until the protection zone is cancelled and everything is being a surveillance zone instead. And 9 days later, the surveillance zone is cancelled. In total, there has to be at least 30 days minimum of surveillance on an infected farm. From day 4, then the final cleaning and disinfection is being done by the authorities. And that is taking a really long time because the legislation is saying that the house should be cleaned and disinfected so that there is no risk at all that the virus is still there and can infect new animals. And those words are taken very seriously from our authorities. That means that in some houses, everything is taken out, even inventory on 4 layers as well. Everything has to be pulled apart, cleaned, disinfected, and pulled in again. And as you can see here, it has taken, in some cases, it has taken up to 70 days, and that is a lot of months. And then when this is done, you can put in new animals again, and then you have to sample those animals when they have been in the house for a while to make sure that they are clean. And the next one, Hannah. But as you can see, this is quite a problem. If you are, let's say it's 85 old weeks of laying hens that has been found infected. This farmer has made a contract with a rearing farm where he has young hens being reared to a new flock he has to put into this house. And at day 1, when this positive sample was taken, those birds were 15 weeks old. So he was about to put out his old flock and put in a new flock. Maybe he has paid 1 million for the flock of new hens. But he cannot have these new hens. You are not allowed to put hens or any animals inside a zone, and you are certainly not allowed to put them inside an infected farm. So that means he cannot get those animals into his farm. And for that, there is no compensation. And in Denmark, we don't have a system where anyone is producing or rearing hens that is not going to be sold. we are not having an extra farmer without hens for a period. Everything is so strict in our logistic table. So this is a really big problem. He loses the flock he's going to have, which he had paid for, but he also has to give a new order for a new flock. And that flock is at least 21 weeks away because they have to be put into the hatchery and reared somewhere else. And maybe there is no one who has space for those hens as well. So this is really, really expensive. And we have had, in one case, we hit this incident and the farmer lost millions of kroners. Next one. We also have another problem because the farmer who is infected, he gets compensation for the animals who has been put down due to disease. He's not paying for the cleaning or disinfection. That is done by the authorities. He's getting some kind of compensation for the value of the animals and for the loss of his production, but not for a new flock. But all the other producers in the zones, no matter how difficult it's going to be for them, that there could also be another egg producer in the zone who was going to have new hens on his farm, but they are not allowed to have new animals inside the zone. So that means that they don't get compensated either. The loss they get, they're going to handle on their own or by an insurance company. Next, please. So you will be compensated if your own production is affected by outbreaks due to compensation on animals and operating losses. But you will not be compensated for the long cleaning period, the empty period, the loss of rearing flocks, etc. And you will not receive compensation if you are in a zone and are subjected to claims as a result. So you have to be aware of this. Next one. And just a little bit about the new animal health law. It was supposed to be a very easy and down-to-earth legislation on animal diseases, who was very easy to follow and easy to read. And I must say that that is not the case. We are several countries who are fighting against them to make some changes because some of it are really, it's not this. You have to take aware that this new law was made at a time of peace. That was made 5 years ago, where we didn't see any hyperpathogenic virus, almost any in Europe. And then when we really have the big problems and a lot of outbreaks, this law is not covering the situation we are handling now. So there should be made some changes here. Next one. And due to the new animal health law, there has also been some new restriction on the low pathogenic avian flu. And that means exactly that we have had a surveillance problem for all hen birds in Denmark, as well as pheasants, ducks and geese and whatever. Everything was covering by a surveillance program. But from the 1st of February this year, due to EU legislation, hens and pheasants shall not longer be tested, but only ducks and geese. But that is quite a difference, because before we would like to know if there were any low pathogenic in our farms so that we could get rid of it. But because of this new legislation, there is no compensation if you find low pathogenic on farm. That means that the authorities can say, well, you cannot deliver your products, you cannot take any eggs or poultry meat away from the flocks. They just have to stay until they are cleaning themselves of the virus, and that could take 2 or 3 months. No one can survive on this, because what about the paying for the products? So that's why we have said that EFSA and the Commission have made a report saying that it shouldn't be, it's not worth making samples from hens and pheasant. It's not necessary, they say. So we follow them and say, okay, we are only testing ducks and geese. Next, please. So this was what I had. I hope this covered. There's probably a lot of questions I haven't resolved. We haven't tried having a slaughterhouse or an egg packing station inside a zone. I fear the day we have it, because we don't know how it's going to be handled. I must say we don't know, actually, because there is so many risk assessment they have to make. So it's impossible to say how it's going to be handled. So I'm sorry if I couldn't make that clear for you.
Thank you, Mie. This has been really interesting to hear about your experiences in Denmark, and like this crashing car and crashing, what it is, sinisorsa in Finnish. On the picture says that this is something that the worst thing that can happen to a poultry industry, this severe disease.
But if you have any questions, you're free to send them to Hannah, and Hannah can contact me, and I will try to answer the best I can.
Yeah. So is there any questions at the moment for me, either in English or Finnish? Now it's time to raise the hand. I saw that there are some people from the industry, and we have, of course, had a lot of discussions here in Finland. So far, we haven't had any cases in poultry, I mean in layers, turkeys or broilers, and that's why we are looking for experiences from other countries, how you are handling the situation. I have written a lot of, okay, Hannele has now a question. Ole hyvä, Hannele.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Mie, for your presentation. It was very interesting. Did you also have some cases where, for example, broiler parent flocks were in the zone but not affected themselves?
Yes, we had. And they were allowed to put eggs out of the zone.
Yes, that was my next question.
Yeah.
Could they deliver eggs to hatchery?
Yes, they could.
I think the flock has to be tested.
Yes.
And the veterinarian has to come to make a clinical
exactly
inspection also. How often did these flocks have to be inspected or tested? If the flock or the farm delivers, for example, twice a week eggs to the hatchery.
Yeah. I think they were only tested once, and that was just after the positive sample was being found at some other farm. And then they made a risk assessment saying that I don't think they tested it more than once, actually.
Yeah, thank you. That was a very, very good information, because we are here preparing also and have tried to make it clear how it should go when a farm, for example, is in the zone but not affected directly. And that was a question we didn't know the answer.
Yeah, but
the
again,
legislation doesn't say it.
It depends on what their risk assessment is saying.
Yes. Based on the risk assessment.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions? I think that you have prepared and showed us this presentation, and it made a lot of ideas. And now we have Tiia Tuupanen raising her hand from the Finnish Food and Safety Authority. Or was it just? It was on my screen for a while. So if you have a question, Tiia, yes, ole hyvä.
Yeah, actually, this is Hanna Lounela. Through the same connection with Tiia. I also work for the Finnish Food Authority, and I'm in charge of the contingency planning in Finland for this disease. It was very interesting to hear you, Mie, and listen to your experiences, because we have been so far saved a lot from what you have been experiencing. We have had just cases in the pheasant farm last year, and then wild birds. So we have been very lucky, and the industry has, of course, done a lot of good work for preventing the entry of the virus. So we are very happy with that, and have a collaboration also similar kind, as you said, that's having meetings regular basis. But there's even though there's the EU legislation and animal health law, I just would like to tell here for the participants that there is still also differences in some things. And as you may also pointed out that that in your authority there is stages where the authority does risk assessment, means that they look at the case-to-case based the situation and make decision. Of course, the basic rules are there, but individual things might vary according to the situation. And that is good to remember, that there is no clear way forward that we always do the same way. We have the same basis always, but there might be some deviations from the basic line. And there's
I can
also
say that all our cases has been handled differently, because also due to where in the country they are located. We had one incident in Copenhagen with the small the parakeets and the things, and there were no hen farms or hens at all in the 10-kilometer zone. So that made a total different picture. So every single case is different.
Yeah, very, very clear that way. But then I would also like to point out with these compensations that these ones are a bit different in different countries. And you did mention that there might be some insurances in your country. I don't know how these are, that how well they would compensate and how many farms actually would have those. But in Finland, we do have a mechanism that we can also compensate for certain production losses, also for other farms that are in the zone. But it is not a mandatory compensation. It is based on a case-by-case decision, and it's not going to be 100% compensation anyway. But there is some possibility for compensation also for other farms that are influenced. But I would like to hear a little bit if you have these insurances that farms.
We don't have an insurance in Denmark, but actually a lot of our producers have made an insurance in a company called Examina in Germany. They are a very big insurance company covering all kind of species for the animal production. For the time being, then they are not taking in new clients, because as they say, we don't make a house insurance on a house that's burning. So for the time being, they are not making any more avian flu insurances. But a lot of our producers have made an insurance there to cover the extra things that is not being covered by the authorities, because we don't get anything covered other what the EU is covering due to the farm that is being infected.
Yeah, we have done a notification for the EU for certain other compensations, and that's why it is possible. But anyway, the other thing still was about this low pathogenic avian influenza, because that one also we can have differences between countries. And in Finland, we have categorized this one in what we call valvottava eläintauti, which is a disease that we do observe, and we do put restrictions on the farm if the low pathogenic avian influenza is found on the farm. Then it is up to the owner to do the measures to control the low pathogenic.
But that also means that you are going to compensate, because the Commission is now no longer compensating.
Yeah, we have a compensation, so that if the owner applies for decision on culling of the animals, it is possible for us to do the decision in certain conditions. And if we do the decision, we would compensate 75% of the value of the animals. But in this case, we don't compensate other things, just the value of the animals. But yeah, that way in Finland, these are the things that differed a little bit from your presentations. I already put those out, but very much appreciated how you described your situation. And as I said, there has been lots of challenges. You had lots of hobby flocks that had been infected. Has that affected the fact that the hobby flocks would also the smaller ones be kept indoors in the future? Do you know?
No.
Areas? Still not.
Unfortunately, no. We are really struggling with that, and a lot of them is not even doing what they're supposed to do with the in-housing. And in our climate is good for handholds, so that means that we have really many households who has 10 hens. So that's a real problem, and they don't give a shit to say whether or not our export is being hit. So that is quite a problem.
Yes, thank you, Hanna. And about the examina, we were in Copenhagen 2 weeks ago, all the Nordic poultry associations, and we were discussing about the differences between the countries in the insurance policies, and we were thinking of having someone speaking about the insurances in the Nordic Poultry Conference, and let's see what happens in November. Is there any other questions for Mie? Now it seems that there's no more questions, but just a few comments from me, because we have been working with this avian influenza threat for years, and it's always hard for us that are involved in the prevention of the diseases. We kind of knows in a theory what might happen and what it would cost, but it is really valuable to hear the experiences from the farmers who have been infected, or for you that are working with the farmers. So what is the situation among the farmers? How do they think about the diseases and the prevention of the diseases nowadays? Have they changed their opinion, and how do they get motivated? Is this something that when a disease hits, they really understand why do we do the things that we do in order to have the animals healthy and safe?
They really understand it. After these 2 years, they know that this is serious, and they know that they can be hit so hard financially. So they are doing everything we are telling them to do. And it also means that no one is allowed on the farms, except from the feed companies. They don't take in visitors. They don't take in, the veterinarians has to come, of course, but every other, please stay away. We are totally closed to keep the distance from everything. So they know it is serious.
Yes, and that's really wonderful that you have been able to provide all the materials for the farmers and give information, and that's of course what we try to do here in Finland too. And now Hannele has some questions.
Yeah. Do you evaluate the biosecurity in the farms in some way?
You think about the farm, the
For example,
generally, or the farm.
For example, we are now using here in Finland the biocheck of Ghent University.
Yeah,
and
we have a lot of practice for both the layers and broilers, and they have an audit once or twice every year, where the total farm is being covered about how they are handling the biosecurity and what they should and shouldn't do and so on. So they are used to being very strict on biosecurity, but this is something completely different. So it's difficult.
Yes, some measures that you do against Salmonella and Campylobacter that might help, but not if it
No.
airborne or something.
No.
Yeah. Good point. But I think that I had many questions, but you already answered quite many of them. And this is since this has been recorded, we try to share it to all the farmers and hope that they will watch this, and we will translate the slides into Finnish so that they can read what has been happening in Denmark. And like we heard that there are differences in the legislation and protocols in our countries, but still the disease is the same. So
Yeah,
that
exactly.
affects farms at the same way. And that's why we try to make them aware of the consequences, what will happen to you and to your neighboring farms and whole industry if the worst case happens.
Exactly.
So many thanks, Mie, and good luck
You're
in
welcome.
Denmark when you come back.
Good luck in Finland.
Thank you. The same disease.
And I hope to see a lot of you in November in Aalborg at the Nordic Poetry Conference.
Yes, was an advertising, so that will be on
Exactly.
8th till 10th of November. So I will put it on our magazine that will be published in early June, so they will be informed. So many thanks. Yeah, many thanks and kiitoksia kaikille osallistujille.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Materiaalit tulee tuonne Suoja Sikana sivuille sitten.